to this video. Thank you so much for clicking. I am so excited for this video. I have been wanting to make this since I started doing resin. If you know me, you know I've had a really long journey with figuring out how to do ocean waves. If you clicked on this video, you are curious how to make ocean waves with resin, or you're just interested in my process. Either way, welcome. So ocean waves, I've been attempting these for 2.5 years. I watched every tutorial. I watched so many YouTube videos, Instagram videos on these ocean waves, and I would copy exactly what they did in my eyes, and I could not figure out how to do this. And I was so frustrated. I've had so much trial and error with this. Like, I will put up some photos, you will see a lot of trial and error has gone into this. And when I figured it out, for the first little while I didn't tell anyone how to do it because it kind of felt like I wanted to keep it for myself because it'd been so long of just trying to figure this out. But I'm ready to reveal my secrets today and let you know step by step how to make an ocean painting here, from start to finish, from the very first layer to the very end. If your method is different than mine, which I'm sure there's many different methods because I see them on the internet all the time, if your method is different, that's totally cool. This is just what I do, and you guys have been requesting an ocean wave tutorial for a while now, so this is what I personally do, and I hope that this helps you a lot. If it does, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new. I do tons of art tutorials and Etsy videos and stuff like that, and I would love to have you part of this awesome family. More resin help, I have a Facebook page, Meg's Resin Art Community. I have my Instagram DMs open for resin questions and just so much more. So I would love it if you could join this awesome art community that we've built here. Everyone is so sweet. I've met actual true friends. So quickly before this video starts, just gonna call myself out when I'm using a popsicle stick. I forgot to put gloves on. Just gonna say it now before all of you correct me. I know that was wrong, and if you're doing this, and make sure that you're wearing gloves throughout the entire process. Learn from my mistakes just as I'm learning from my own. Make sure you're wearing all of your resin safety stuff. I wear a respirator when I'm doing the resin and when I'm sanding, gloves. Make sure that you're protecting yourself. So yeah, just thought I would throw that in there before I get 1,000 comments about it.
Let's go over everything you're going to need to complete this project, and in the bottom left corner of each clip you're going to see where I got the item. You can get popsicle sticks or silicone stir sticks, plastic cups or silicone cups, and of course some sort of bowl. A white alcohol ink, I really like this Pinata brand. Some sort of color, I used pigments. Your brand of resin, a heat gun, and of course you don't need one this fancy, I upgraded to it later. An electric sander, all of your safety equipment, some acrylic paint for the finishing touches, and of course paintbrushes to do that. I got these little gray rocks from a craft store, and I'm not really sure where I got this clear glaze, to be honest, and then some really coarse sandpaper, and of course your wood panel. I get mine from an art store called Desserts. Now that you know everything you need, let's talk about the setup. I like to use a plastic garbage bag and just tape it to the ground because you can reuse it since resin does not stick to it. Also, you can raise your board off the garbage bag. I personally don't, because if it's uneven, the waves will just fall off of one side. I'll insert a photo. That's happened to me too many times. You want your board as level as possible, otherwise your work may not turn out. This is an example of what can happen. They looked really good at first, and then they just started falling off the side. So I like to just keep mine flat to avoid any issues with that. A whole video on this, but essentially I take hot water and I place my resin and hardener in there for about 10 minutes, and then I dry the cups completely because water will ruin your work. And then I mix really slowly for about 4 minutes using the heat gun periodically to pop bubbles. There is the difference. Now that we are all set up, let's talk about the technique itself. I set my board down on my garbage bag and then mixed some of the gray stones with resin, as well as any pigments I wanted with resin, and spread it around. Like I said, this first layer did not work out at all, so this is going to be what not to do. So I'm kind of happy that this happened so I could show you guys what I did wrong. I just spread the colors around by hand, and as you can see, they're not showing up very well. I usually paint the board white first, not sure why I didn't this time. Also, look how thick this line is with my alcohol ink. It did not work out for me. I've seen people pour really thick lines and it works, but for me, whenever I do this, it doesn't work. So you're gonna see me spreading the white alcohol ink with this heat gun, and the key is not to overdo it and spend too much time in one area. You're gonna see me going over and over it. Also, you don't wanna hold your heat gun right above like this. You want to tilt it to the side. That way you get those ocean wave cell effect. But look how long I'm spending in this one area. This is just gonna not create cells. It's just gonna turn out really muddy. And this is why I don't like doing thick lines of white alcohol ink. I just find it doesn't spread very nicely and it's just too thick. But I wasn't too upset about this because in order to get a really awesome ocean effect, you want a lot of depth, which means a couple different layers of resin. So I knew this was going to be the bottom layer and I wasn't too upset about it. But one thing to keep in mind is just to trust the process because it's not going to look like an ocean right away. I feel like that kind of comes in from doing more layers, so don't get too disheartened if it doesn't work out in the first layer because I promise you, as you keep going with it, you'll see it look more and more realistic. So 24 hours later, after the first layer cured, I came back in with a pigment called teal, and then the bottom pigment here is called black sea, but I don't stick with this color the whole time because I just wasn't finding it very pigmented. And again, I just spread that around with my hands, and then afterwards I would go over it with a heat gun just to spread out any harsh lines. So here I am just kind of blending the two colors. I kind of wanted to just completely cover that bottom layer, but it ended up showing through a little bit, which I was not mad about. So yeah, I'm just blending it so that there's no harsh lines for where I moved the resin around with my hands. Here is the biggest difference in what I do. So to get a good ocean wave, you're gonna want it to be really thin. So I just pour it on with a popsicle stick like so and just kind of add to it like that. And you're also going to want to stagger it so that it's not all in one continuous line to give it, again, more of a realistic look, as I keep saying. Same with the shoreline as well. And then I'm just going to tilt my heat gun and push it slowly. See how much less time I'm spending in each area. And if the cells don't turn up right away, don't panic. Sometimes they take a minute to show up. Day 3, I decided to scrap this black sea pigment and I went in with a really dark blue. It was kind of a risky move, but I felt like it would look way more like the deep sea versus whatever the black sea pigment was doing for me there. So I just spread that around. Again, just using the heat gun to pop any bubbles that arise as well as blend it. And then I went in with my teal pigment and just kind of spread that around, and we are not going to pour resin right up to the gray stones again for this layer, as you'll see. So I blended the teal and the dark blue. I didn't want any harsh lines again, so I was just kind of trying to blend, and I added some more dark blue closer up, and you'll see as I go along, just kind of trying to make it look more real. This is my layer of clear resin. You can kind of see at the top there, I'm just spreading this out, and this is where my next layer of waves are going to go. I wanted to keep it clear, that way the layer underneath it, the previous waves would show through. And here we are back doing that same wave technique. I'm just drawing it on, and this also helps to give the effect that multiple waves are rolling into the shore. I had to use my phone flashlight to see exactly where the clear resin ended, so I knew where to put the white alcohol ink. Here I am pushing the white alcohol ink again, just like we did before, not spending too much time in one area. I also added some more white alcohol ink up near the shoreline to give it more of a 3D look, so that it was kind of splashing onto the rocks. And I just kind of slightly blended that a little bit. Here's how it looked at the end of day 3. I was so much happier with this layer, and I was finally starting to see it come together. But then I woke up the next morning, and if you can see that, there is a huge hair along the bottom. So I was devastated that I thought it was going to be done this day, and now I did another layer. Actually, I did a 4th layer of just the teal and blue to try and cover the hair, which it did, but it was super disappointing. So it ended up being 4 layers of resin. Now that your waves are done, you can do more layers than this or less, totally up to you, but let's talk about how I finish up my paintings. It is time to electric sand the edges, and since it had been 4 layers of resin, it was a lot to sand off, and there was so much excess resin. I actually went in and started kicking it off at one point because it was so much that it was just tearing right through my sandpaper. It's usually not this intense, but just from all of the days of resin built up on it, it was a lot of work to sand this off. It definitely took about an hour. This is me saying sandpaper number 3, and when I got inside I just wiped off the dust and all of that. Time to paint the edges. I use these 2 different acrylic paints. I usually paint the edges white, but I thought it might be kind of cool to paint them blue, so I did teal along the edges on the top and then the darker blue along the bottom, which is just the teal and the darker blue mixed. And my camera decided to not focus on me and focus on my art wall in the background, but I kind of get it, you know, it's a nice art wall. Obviously, no one ever sees the back of the painting, but I just feel like it's really complete when I do the whole thing. I go in with nail polish remover and just take off any of the paint that ended up on the resin. And then I spray it with that gloss finish, wearing a respirator during that process as well, and I have to let that sit for a little bit. Now we are done. We went through all of the different steps and we can see the final product.
So that is how I made this beauty here. It was about a week of work, so it was a long process, and this one is obviously a pretty large piece compared to what I normally do, but I really love it and I love the stones. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and you are able to start your ocean art journey, because it's honestly so much fun and people really like the ocean stuff. They respond well to it. So if you're interested in it, I hope that this helped you. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all so much. I will have lots more tutorials coming out soon. I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!